All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Hellman. I'm the presiding judge for the Second Judicial Circuit, which is comprised of Minnehaha and Lincoln counties. I am delighted to be here today to announce to you that our community is one of 4 communities in the United States who has been selected for participation in the launch of a project called Just Home Project, which is a national program designed to advance community-driven efforts to improve access to housing for individuals impacted by the justice system. This initiative is led by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation and the Urban Institute. Our community, again, is one of 4 communities who will receive $775,000 for a 6-month planning period to identify a housing program option for individuals in our community impacted by the justice system. We'll also be eligible to receive investment from a MacArthur $15 million fund to impact investment funds for our community. Our judges, our probation officers, and our specialty courts here in the Second Circuit are acutely aware of members of our community involved in the justice system who are consistently searching for affordable, adequate housing. One of the primary barriers to individuals in our community achieving and maintaining sobriety is having a safe, secure, sober home to go home to. Program partners here in our community will build on existing community engagement efforts and structures to efficiently use resources in our community. And during this 6-month planning process, these community partners will develop a housing investment action plan for people impacted by the justice system. After that 6-month planning period, we will enter into an 18-month phase where we implement the program that we will put in place. I'm pleased to introduce one of our other community partners, Minnehaha County Commissioner Dean Karski.
Thank you, Judge Hellman. I'm going to deviate a little bit from my script here because what the judge didn't mention is the work that was involved in getting us to this point. We didn't ask to be part of this. We were asked by the MacArthur Foundation to submit our proposal for how we could do this. 20 communities were asked. 10 were narrowed down to, and 4 were selected. This is huge. We're on a level across our nation with communities that we are on a much higher level than what we are as far as population. So it's very significant that we're here today talking about this. And Minnehaha County is truly no stranger to the MacArthur Foundation. We've worked for over half a decade with the foundation to make our community, our county, a better place for all of its citizens. And a great example of that is the link. We spent the last 3 hours in a strategic planning session, the mayor, myself, and other board members and providers talking about where we want to go over the next 5 years with the link. Today's announcement is just the next step in expanding supportive services in our community to those that are justice involved. But it's the first step in a process that will serve housing needs for those people that are justice involved. We were selected by the MacArthur Foundation because of the commitment of the partners in our community, and the list is very long, and I'd miss somebody if I tried to name everybody, but we have a lot of thanks to go out to individuals and organizations to get us to this point of where we're at, where we can compete for the type of money that will solve a housing problem, an issue, a subject that's much talked about, but it's always how do you get it off the ground? Where do you start? And this is the start. This is the first step. So one individual has done more than talk about what we're going to be embarking on. He's actively involves himself in, and his business, in helping those that are justice involved. And I'd like you to introduce you to Greg Sands. If you don't know him, he's part of the solution. So welcome, Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg Sands. I own Sands Wall Systems in Sioux Falls. I came here in 1991, and I rented a house down the street for $325 a month. I couldn't afford the rent, so I got a roommate. The landlord knew that I had previously been incarcerated, and in my opinion today, took advantage of that situation in my trade. I'm a drywall finisher, I'm a tradesman, and offered me $325 to fix and paint this apartment. And it was worth about $3,000 or $4,000. That was one of the first things I learned that stuck with me, is that I had to be careful people would take advantage of where I was at in my life. And as I moved forward in life and in this community, there's so many people that were there to help me and to lift me up. And then as my company started growing, and there were some things happening in my life that were in the press, it was all good, but I had to go to these customers and talk to them about my past life and, why did I get a presidential pardon and blah, blah, blah. And through that process, I built these relationships with other like-minded business owners, businessmen and women, and we started doing things to change our community. And we've done a lot. And to get this, so awesome, and I want to thank the MacArthur Foundation and all of this massive group of people that it took to make this happen. If you guys saw the emails I got on this deal, I mean, it's crazy. And but they're working their butts off. And this doesn't happen. The reason we're chosen is because we're Sioux Falls and we rock. I mean, we have the county, city, private sector, healthcare, everything, everyone's involved here together. And he brought up that they came to us. That's because we rock here. And I am fortunate in my life that I have got to see the turn and the change in many, many people's lives through this great community of ours. And he also mentioned about the link, and that's another great program that all these people have put together. And I'm very proud to be involved with this program and look forward to what all I can do with them, and then I look forward to what's next. And I believe that, the takeaway of how special we are to get selected for this. And we got $15 million grant, and someone walking up and knocking on your door saying, hey, do you need 15 mil for housing? In today's world, that door isn't getting knocked on very often. And they're knocking on our door because we're doing a lot of stuff right. We have good leadership and we have a good team, and the community is always together. And I'm also so grateful that they had me speak in front of Mayor Tin Hankin, because who wants to go after him with those boyish good looks and charm? He still has dimples. You can't compete with that. It is my honor to introduce our great mayor, Mayor Tin Hankin.
Thanks, Greg. Those are wrinkles, man. They aren't dimples. Well, this is a very cool grant. What I wanted to do is talk a little bit about why this is important. So we talk about justice-impacted housing. That's a new term to me. A lot of times historically we've called this felon-friendly housing. Housing for felons. Well, you call housing felon-friendly housing, it instantly puts that person in a category as a felon. And that person is so many other things than just a felon. And so justice-impacted housing is a critical need in our community. Last night, I had the chance before City Council meeting to go to speak with a group, Leaders of Tomorrow group, that's a justice-impacted cohort. And there's probably, maybe 15 people in the room, all of whom have been impacted by our justice system at some point. And the number one thing that they wanted to talk about, and we couldn't even get to all the questions, everyone had their hand in the air. They wanted to talk about housing and share stories, how hard it is if you have a record to try and find housing, or try and find a landlord that will take a chance on you. And if they do take a chance on you, do they take advantage of you because of your status, because they know how hard it is for you to get housing? So those rents can creep up and up and up, and the care for the unit can sometimes get lower and lower. And people are afraid to say something because where else are they going to go? So there's so many issues around justice impacted housing. Some of those barriers I just mentioned, there's often the financial burden of just the application process. There's tenant screening practices that are hard for our justice impacted community. And as Commissioner Karski just said, we were just up in the Link for Link strategy session for 3 hours. One of the number one things we identified that we need for some of the people we're serving in the Link is where to link them to in terms of housing needs. And a lot of times the clientele we're serving at the Link has been impacted by our justice system. So I can't stress enough how hard it is for those who have been through our justice system to find housing in our market. Right now, if I can just soapbox it for a minute, we're trying to build houses, not even felon-friendly housing, on infill developments in the Sioux Falls, and neighbors oppose it, people unite against it. It's hard enough to build regular market rate housing. So if I was to say, hey, we're going to put an apartment complex across the street here, and it's going to be felon-friendly, people will unite and rise up against it. And we have to change that stigma, that stereotype about people who have been impacted by our justice system. They're some of the hardest workers. They have been through more than a lot of us can ever imagine. They've served their time. They're contributing members to our workforce, and they're very important members of the One Sioux Falls framework that we talk about. So this is going to be a very important piece of funding, not only to hopefully help develop some of that housing, but on the very front end, just do the research and determine what barriers exist. Where can we make the biggest impact early in Sioux Falls on this topic? So I want to thank Judge Howman. She's a tireless advocate on this topic. The county's incredible. Erin Surska is such a champion on this stuff with grant applications, and she always finds a way to get it done. Carrie Benz with the county, who leads a lot of our homeless and hard to house initiatives too. We just have a great team that really comes together between the city, the county, all the partners. So very excited about this to see where this heads. And with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions for myself, for Greg, Commissioner Karski, or Judge Howman.
Just to clarify, the $775,000, that's going to be the first step of studying, getting a task force together perhaps,
You want
and
to speak to that, Judge?
coming up with some sort of a plan?
The $775,000 is a 6-month planning grant. We already have established our steering committees and our work group committees. We've already had a number of meetings, so that process is already underway. It's a 6-month process to identify the gaps in our community so that we can be able to maximize the impact that we have on the community. We want to identify what's needed, what's not out there, and then we'll have an 18-month implementation process for whatever that housing plan is that we develop.
And the $15 million will be to go ahead and start that building process.
The 4 communities who are receiving the grant funds have access to that $15 million. It's a PRI capital type of program, not one that we've ever experienced to my knowledge in South Dakota. But the 4 communities will have access to that $15 million to implement whatever that housing plan is.
And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but could you see one location for this, or could it be in multiple locations throughout the city?
Don't know the answer to that yet. We haven't done that much work yet.
and that's why, like, conversations like I had last night with those, folks that have been justice impacted, we don't necessarily have the solutions here. We need to get involved and engaged with the people who are living these challenges every day and understand if there were 3, 4, 5 things we could fix in Sioux Falls. It may not even be the physical housing itself. It may be other barriers that prevent them from getting into housing that's already in this inventory. We look at crime-free housing, or we look at maybe it's more units, or maybe it's more family-friendly units. Maybe it's application fees that are too great for people just coming out of incarceration to have to overcome. So we don't know what the challenges are yet. And I just want to stress that we really are going to rely on those people that have been impacted to give us the feedback to support the ideas that we can use and dip into that $15 million fund to make change.
That's an important part of this grant. One of the requirements of the grant was that we proposed to the MacArthur Foundation a group of community stakeholders that just don't include people you usually see doing projects like that, but people with lived experience. So in addition to Mr. Sands, we also have Caitlin Shriver, who is on our steering committee, and she was a 2015 graduate of our Second Circuit Drug Court program. She's here today, hiding in the back. We're very glad that she's here. So as the mayor said, we aren't the people who have lived in that system. I mean, I work in the system every day, and what I identify as barriers is probably very different from the people who are living that experience. So in addition to having these individuals on our steering committee, we're also going to be planning focus groups with different entities in the community, but particularly people who have been involved in the justice system, who have had those housing barriers, can tell us exactly what all of those barriers are, and then hopefully we can come up with some solutions following those discussions.
Other questions today on the grant? All right, thank you for being here. Judge Howman, Dean, myself, Greg, all available for one-on-ones if you need it. Thank you, everyone.